Tagalong Bride by Ruth Ann Nordin, Chapter 19. I was about to ask you the same thing, Lucas said. From behind Lucas, Gail quickly fastened the buttons of her shirt and riding jacket. That was close. If they had gotten any further, the stranger would have seen more of her than he had a right to see. I heard someone screaming and came in here to make sure no one was hurt, the man said. I heard there are outlaws in this area. In fact, a group of them have been reported to have a hideout in this canyon. He eyed Lucas. You don't seem like the outlaw type. Lucas glanced back at Gail. Catching the question in his eyes, she nodded to let him know she was decent. He drew her to his side, then turned his attention back to the stranger. Are you searching for Bauer, Big Mike, and Squiggy? Lucas asked. He indicated his agreement. I heard there's a fourth. He's a new member of the gang who came from Belmont. Gail's eyes grew wide. Was news of Bernadette's abduction all over Arizona? We're looking for them, Lucas said. They kidnapped my sister. Is your sister Bernadette Reed? The stranger asked. As a matter of fact, she is. I'm Lucas Reed. The man put his gun in the holster, loosely fastened around his tight denims. He held his hand out to Lucas. I'm Blaze Levi. Seeming relieved, Lucas reached out to shake his hand. Blaze gave him a friendly but firm shake that made Lucas rub his arm when they were done. It wasn't surprising that Blaze's strength was more than Lucas had expected. Blaze was built more solid than Lucas was. Blaze pulled out an envelope from his back pocket and gave it to Lucas. This is proof that I am who I say I am. One of the men I do business with came with news of your sister's abduction. I came to rescue her. Gail's gaze went to the envelope, and she noted Lucas's familiar script. Lucas pulled out the letter. She scanned it. It was about the arranged marriage he had set up between Blaze and Bernadette. Lucas gave a jerk and pulled her over to the wall. At first, she thought he didn't want her to skim the letter, but then he said, The thing is back. What thing? Blaze asked as he followed Lucas's gaze. Lucas pointed to the scorpion that was creeping along the rocky floor. That thing! Oh, that's no bother. Blaze straight over to it and stomped on it. They heard a crack. Gail winced at the sound, and Lucas shuddered. Blaze lifted his foot and checked under his boot. He left the small cavern, and they heard him scrape his boot clean before he came back in. Those things can't kill you. They're too small. Lucas's face went red from what Gail knew to be embarrassment, but she didn't blame him for being scared of the thing. Lucas hadn't grown up here. He didn't know what was dangerous and what was harmless. Besides, Zeke had made it sound like scorpions were scary. I take it you didn't pay the ransom for your sister, Blaze said as he gestured for them to sit across from him at the fire. He shrugged off the leather sack he had strapped to his back, placed it on the ground, then sat down. Lucas hesitated for a moment, but settled next to Gail across from Blaze. I didn't realize there was a ransom. You didn't? Word is all over the area that the rich brother is supposed to pay the ransom, Blaze said, not hiding his surprise. I didn't expect you to come all the way out here, especially without some help. He glanced at Gail. No offense, ma'am, but a group of bandits won't be intimidated by a pretty little lady. We didn't come out here alone, Lucas said. We hired a lawman to help us. Lucas proceeded to slip his arm around Gail in a gesture that let her know he didn't want other men to notice that she was pretty. And that was a gesture that she rather liked. It was nice to know Lucas wanted her all to himself. Not that he had to worry about her falling in love with someone else. She was, and always would be, his. We made it almost all the way here with him, Lucas continued. He caught someone spying on us and ran off to chase him. We don't know what happened to him. Hiring only one lawman isn't such a bad move, Blaze said. You notice that I came here by myself. You don't want to attract Bauer's attention, and you'll do that with a group of people. In our case, Lucas began, there was only one man able to help us in Flagstaff. We would have welcomed more if it had been available. Oh, well, don't you worry. I grew up in Colorado where I learned how to hunt and kill cougars and bears. I liken those bandits to animals like that. I know they're dangerous, but they value their necks. They won't do anything stupid. Now, Lee and Wilson are the ones you really have to worry about. Blaze opened his bag. Do you like dried berries, deer meat, pecans, and biscuits? I even have a small jar of honey to go with the biscuits." In all of her excitement over kissing Lucas, Gail had forgotten that she'd been hungry. At the mention of food, especially honey to sweeten the biscuits, her stomach let her know that she should eat before going to sleep. "Do you have enough to share with us? The bag isn't that big," Lucas replied, shooting an uncertain look at the thing. "You'd be surprised what you can fit into a bag when you pack things the right way." Blaze pulled out a bedroll, a small pan, and the food. He patted the bag and set it aside. "I have more, but it's nothing we need at the moment." Lucas glanced at her, and she shrugged. If she could pack like Blaze, they would have had an assortment of options to choose from to eat as well. "I figure we'll look for Bernadette before the sun comes out," Blaze began, as he started to cook the biscuits over the fire. "If what they say about Bauer and his gang is true, they aren't early risers. Of course, given that they are in a group, they could take turns with the lookouts. I had time to study this canyon, and if you go from one large rock to another at the right angle, you're pretty much invisible. Don't worry, we're going to rescue Bernadette, and when we do, we'll make sure those bandits don't do anything like this ever again." "They have guns," Lucas said. "Gail and I don't know how to shoot a gun." "That's no problem. I can shoot anything 40 yards away." Gail had no idea if that was remarkable or not. She hadn't thought to ask Zeke how far he could shoot something, but knowing Zeke, he would have exaggerated his ability. "Biscuits are done," Blaze announced as he set the pan aside. "After we eat, I'm going to scout the area a bit more. I won't be long. I suspect these bandits are near the top of the rim like we are. There's no point in dragging a woman that far down when you're expecting someone to pay a ransom." He urged them to help themselves to the food. "If you're still hungry, I have more in the bag." Lucas released Gail and collected food to put on their plates. "Do you think Bernadette is safe? I mean..." He gave a cautious glance at Gail that let her know he was trying to protect her sensibilities. "Do you think these bandits will be kind to her? I worry about her and what she might be going through." "It's hard to say what they're doing. She didn't ask to be kidnapped. No one can hold her accountable for what they're doing. I will treat her with the utmost care when I marry her." Lucas offered a nod, then gave Gail her plate. "Tell me more about your sister," Blaze said as he dipped his biscuit into the honey. "You wrote me what she looks like. That she's 19, that she grew up in Philadelphia, and that she was taught to manage a home. You didn't mention the things that she's interested in. What kind of things does she enjoy?" Gail ate her meal in silence as the two discussed Bernadette. Blaze might be rough around the edges, but he was a gentleman at heart. He cared enough about Bernadette to leave his ranch and come all the way out here to rescue her. More than that, he was willing to marry her even if the bandits took her virtue. If Bernadette managed to get through all of this, she wouldn't have to worry about anything for the rest of her life. Lucas had done very well in picking a husband for his sister. She had known Lucas had good judgment about things, which was one of the reasons that she loved him. Realizing how much care that he had taken in picking a husband for his sister only added to her feelings for him. And since he cared about Bernadette so well, Gail had no doubt he would always do what was best for her as well. Zeke's wrists were raw from hours of trying to free them from the rope, but he was determined to keep trying. As his mom liked to say, things were only hopeless when one gave up, and he was not going to give up. A young woman's life was at stake. He had to be strong for her. His gaze went to Bauer, who was seated at the opening of the hideout. His back was to everyone. He had his arms crossed. His gun was resting in his holster. The other two bandits were sleeping in the shadows, where the small fire had died a half hour ago. If Zeke could free himself of the rope, he could sneak up on Bauer, grab Bauer's gun, and then this would all be over. Then he could give Bernadette back over to her brother. He would return to Flagstaff a hero. No one would make fun of him ever again, especially not the Trainer twins, who used to tell everyone that he'd never amount to anything while they were growing up. His gaze went to Bernadette. She, like Big Mike and Squiggy, had nodded off to sleep. Her golden hair hung around her face, partly obscuring his view of her. She sure was a pretty thing. He was surprised, though relieved for her sake, that the bandits had not touched her. Bauer let out a sigh, and Zeke's attention went back to him. Bauer shifted to the side, let out a fart, then settled back into place. It was a good thing Bernadette had not been awake to hear that. It grossed Zeke out, and Zeke was already aware of how disgusting men could get. Someone like her had been sheltered her entire life, but with all her wealthy upbringing and all, he could only imagine what a shock all of this had to be for her. Well, he was going to save her, even if he had to work at these ropes the entire night. He gritted his teeth as the ropes rubbed against his raw skin. Blood seeped from the fresh wound. No matter. He would not give up. He would keep going no matter what. Pushing through the pain, he continued to try to loosen the ropes, holding his wrists together.